Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to a Rabbit Hole Matrix. I'm your host, as always. Today, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about Moses and the Serpent cult. And I'm going to begin right now. Who was Moses? According to the Bible, Moses was the son of a Levite man by the name of Amram and a Levite woman named Jochebed, who was his father's sister. Levi was the son of Jacob, and Rachel the Aryan from Haran, a Hittite Sumerian kingdom. Now, Haran in the Bible is an Aryan kingdom. They were known as the Hurrians, and they were an Aryan race that descended from the Caucasus sometime after the flood. From Haran, now Jacob was the son of Isaac, and Rebekah was also a Hurrian who was an Aryan from Haran. Isaac was the son of Abraham, and Sarah, who was the Sumerian Aryan from the ancient city of Ur in the land of Sumer. Abraham was an ancestor of Shem, the founder of Sumer. Shem was one of Noah's three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Noah was an ancestor of Seth, who was the third son of Adam and Eve. Adam was also known as Thor of mythology, from the Norse mythology. That is who he is. He is the rebel. He is the thunderer. He is the one who wields the hammer, the club, his herder, his stinger. That is what his weapon was called. It was the mighty striker. Adam, Thor, was the founder of the ancient kingdom Troy in Asia Minor. Thor had many names amongst the ancients, one of which is particularly important, and that being the name of Dar-Dan, or simply Dan, which later became one of the 12 tribes of Israel. In the British Isles, there existed a race of giant godlike beings by the name of the Tuatha De Danann, who were said to be a blonde or red-headed race with pale skin, blue-green eyes, also known as the Shimmering Ones, or the Shimmering Ones, sons of Shem. And this is where we get the name Shem, or Sumer of Samaria. Eve was the daughter of Mary, who was the serpent priestess of Mari, located in the lands of Sumer. Mary was also known as El, Heidi, and Eld, the fiery El, ruler of the deep. And from this we get the terms hell and hellfire, because hell was the goddess of death in ancient Sumer. Okay. Now, Mary had many other names amongst the ancients, such as Hathor in Egypt, where she was considered the goddess of fate in Hades. And Hathor's symbols were the cow, just like the Sumerian goddess Ninharsag, who was literally nicknamed the cow. Hathor was always depicted standing on snakes, with serpents on her head standing on end. This is where we get the legend of Medusa, the Gorgon. Mary was also called Kali in India, and was considered to be the mother goddess, who was also depicted standing on and surrounded by serpents. Kali was a ruthless, bloodthirsty deity, known for her insatiable thirst for human blood, and is often depicted with fangs like a vampire. Mary, or El, always has a male consort, as well as a son, such as Woden, who was her consort, and Baldur, who was her son. It is from the lands of ancient Troy that we get the worship of the sun, Thor, or Odin, who was perpetuated and passed through the Aryan line, while it is from the lands of Sumer that the worship of the serpent derives. So here we have two warring cults that were eventually semi-united through the marriage of Adam, Thor, and Odin, and Eve, Gun Aoife. Marriage between enemies was often used as a method of peace. For instance, the Hittite kingdom was often at war with Egypt until the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II, after having lost many wars, gave in to the Hittites by signing a peace treaty and marrying a Hittite princess. According to the Bible, a man named Joseph, son of Jacob, was sold into slavery by his brothers. Once in Egypt, Joseph became an interpreter of dreams, which brought him into direct contact with the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh goes on to say, "What man is like Joseph before the Lord? He shall be second only to Pharaoh." This is pretty incredible for reasons I will soon provide. It is extremely unlikely that a Pharaoh would hold a dream interpreter in such high regard. I mean, second to Pharaoh? That's pretty impressive. Who was Joseph? Who was his God? And who was this Pharaoh? As I have already elaborated upon, Joseph was a son of Jacob the Aryan, and Jacob brought with him to Egypt the god of his father known as An, the Hidden One. The pharaoh at this time was none other than Amenhotep IV, better known as Akhenaten, father of Tutankhamun. At this time in Egyptian history, Akhenaten abolished and banned the worship of all other Egyptian deities besides the one true god, An. Akhenaten quickly built a temple dedicated to the worship of An, and naming the site On, later renamed Heliopolis by the Greeks and the Romans. Joseph was magistrate of all the land of Egypt and became known as the Son of God amongst the Egyptians, primarily due to his blonde hair and blue eyes. Joseph later married a woman named Asenath, daughter of Potiphar, who was the priest of On, who was originally a worshiper of the old Egyptian gods until she later converted to Joseph's faith. However, Asenath was also of the Aryan lineage, which can be deduced by the fact that Potiphar told Joseph, "The woman that you see in the tower is not a foreign woman, but our daughter, a virgin, who rejects all men and foreign husbands. No one has ever cleaved unto her. No one has seen her except for you today. If you wish, she may come to bow and greet your nobility, because our daughter is your sister." By sister, Potiphar means that she is one of their tribe and their people. In Hebrew law, a man is only to marry a woman of their tribe, and I will prove this here now. Numbers 36, 7 through 8. "So shall not the inheritance of the children of Israel remove from the tribe, for every one of the children of Israel shall keep himself to the inheritance of the tribe of their fathers. And every daughter that possesseth any inheritance in the tribe of the children of Israel shall be wife unto one of the family of that tribe of her father, that the children of Israel may enjoy every man the inheritance of their father." Joseph and Asenath were later engaged and to be married, but Akhenaten's son Tutankhamun wanted Asenath for himself. Tutankhamun attempted to hire Joseph's brother Simeon or Simon and Levi to capture and kill him, but they refused. Later, Joseph's brothers Dan and Gad tell Tutankhamun that they will do the deed, and they conspire to kidnap Asenath. While attempting to kidnap Asenath, Benjamin, Joseph's youngest brother, began slinging stones at Tutankhamun and his soldiers. While casting stones, one of the stones struck Tutankhamun in the left temple and wounded him gravely. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun arrived just in time to fight off Asenath's pursuers and save Asenath from Tutankhamun, who later dies at a young age from the wound he took on his temple. This is the true death of Tutankhamun. He tried to possess Joseph's wife Asenath, and he was later killed by Joseph's brothers by a stone that he took to the temple. After Tutankhamun passed, his father Akhenaten, being of a very old age, died from a broken heart. However, Akhenaten had a grandson that belonged to his daughter, who becomes queen regent in his place until he is of an age acceptable to rule. Now, it is plausible that this could very well have been Queen Hatshepsut, though this is only theoretical because we don't have enough information at the moment to verify this. During her reign, Joseph helped her raise her son and becomes like a father unto him. Eventually, Joseph died, and the queen isn't far behind him, leaving her son to rule as Pharaoh. Immediately upon taking over the rule of Egypt, he resurrected the gods of old and banished the worship of the Aryan god On. The Hebrews began to multiply greatly in the land of Egypt, so much so that the future pharaohs decided to enslave them in an attempt to control their growth. During this time period in Egypt and its sister nation Cush to the south were united through trade and intermarriage. The slave masters that whipped, beat, raped, and murdered the Hebrew slaves were of both Egyptian and Cushite lineage. Eventually Moses is born, and his mother, fearing for his life, places Moses in a basket with pitch and floats him down the Nile River, where he is eventually found by the daughter of Pharaoh. The Pharaoh's daughter had mercy on Moses and decided to take him in and raise him as her own. Although Moses was raised in Egypt as an Egyptian, he must have been in contact with his mother and siblings, because the Bible goes from Moses' childhood right into Moses slaying an Egyptian taskmaster because he sees him abusing one of his people. Moses is somehow discovered and warned to flee Egypt because the Pharaoh sought to kill him. But who is it that warned him? Based on common sense, Moses was likely warned by his stepmother, who was Pharaoh's sister. Of course she loved Moses. He was like a son to her, and she would no doubt have done everything she could to save him. Either way, Moses fled Egypt and headed into the Sinai Peninsula, where he entered into the service of a Cushite Midianite priest by the name of Jethro. Moses eventually married a woman named Zipporah, who was one of Jethro's many daughters, and had 2 sons by her, the first being Gershom and the second Eliezer. Here's where things get interesting. Eventually, Moses is compelled to climb Mount Sinai to see if the Lord is real. After this encounter, or to see if the Lord is real. Once atop the mountain, Moses encountered a burning bush, which is very important because the God of Moses is soon to serve. Moses is soon to serve as none other than Marduk, the dragon, the serpent, the devourer, who was Saturn. What Moses really encountered atop the mountain was a ritual sacrifice taking place by followers of an ancient religion of his forefathers. You have to remember that Abraham brought this religion with him much earlier when he traveled from Ur into the Sinai in Egypt. After this encounter, before Moses departs, God tells Moses to cast his staff upon the ground, which he does only to realize that his staff becomes a serpent. What? A serpent? Why? The reason is simple. Marduk is the great serpent. He is the serpent king. The serpent king, God of all, which no other serpent can conquer. He is the consumer, the devourer. That's why when the Egyptian magi cast their staffs upon the ground, they were consumed immediately by the staff of Moses, who was symbolized Marduk. Moses eventually made his way back to Egypt and presented himself before the Pharaoh, at which time a very peculiar scene unfolded. Once again, Moses casted his staff down before the Pharaoh, where it once again transformed into a serpent. Pharaoh then summoned his magicians, who produced serpents of their own, only to have them devoured whole by Moses' serpent. This is important because of its meaning. What this is telling us is that Marduk is the king serpent, as well as a cannibal. Again, this is symbolism of Saturn. Later on, after the Hebrew Exodus, Moses crafts a serpent head on the tip of his staff, which has the ability to cure anyone who has been bitten by venomous snakes simply by gazing into its eyes. Moses is definitely not a very nice guy. He borders more on a line of an ancient Hitler. Moses slaughters any and everyone who gets in his way, family or otherwise. Moses kills every single person that left Egypt with him by the end. He killed Aaron's sons by burning them alive, and then they even attempted to make Aaron and his still living sons partake in the eating of this sacrifice. Eat his own sons. Aaron escaped this horrendous fate by appeasing Moses. Moses then later killed his brother Aaron atop a mountain where he stripped him of his priestly ephod. This guy was ruthless, which is why it is said, "There has never been another since like unto Moses." Moses' death is very obscure, but one can only guess that he was eventually murdered by someone close to him because he was out of control. Moses was the high priest of Marduk, who was the serpent god of Saturn. We get the word Elohi, Jehovah, meaning the Lord, from El, who is part of the Trinity, El, Asherah, Astarte, and Baal, who was originally Baal-zebub, later known as Beelzebub, who is Bel, who is Nimrod, who was given the title Baal, meaning the Lord, who is Tubal, Cain, meaning the Lord Cain, who is Malach or Moloch, who is Marduk, who is Nana, who is Sin, who is Set, who is Saturn, and who is Satan. Belti, meaning the lady, is Asherah, who is Semiramis, who is Inanna, who is Ishtar, who is Lilith, who is Isis, who is Mary, who is Hathor, who is Hecate, who is Astarte, who is Barati, who is Diana, and who is Britannia, etc. These are all dark aspects representing Saturn. The symbols for Saturn are the hexagram, or the Star of David, the cube, the eye, the owl, the sickle or the scythe, the color black, the goat or the satire, all represent the dark star Saturn, including the Baphomet. The Baphomet is an androgynous male and female goat-headed figure with female breasts, a torch blazing between his horns, and two serpents intertwined about a scepter or a wand between his thighs. He sits cross-legged upon a cube, which is the Kaaba, which is the symbol of Saturn. This is the true meaning of the Kaaba stone in Mecca, along with the stone of Abraham. Again, Abraham was a son of Terah, who was an Aryan from the Chaldees, who was Nana and Sin, also known as Marduk or Malach. Originally, Mecca was a pagan site of goddess worship. The color for the goddess is green, and also the chosen color of Islam. Later to become the temple of Zoroaster, where a flame, fire, which represents Saturn, was said to have burned for 1,000 years until the time of Muhammad, when suddenly one night these fires were extinguished along with the destruction of all pagan sites and statues. Muhammad was later married to the daughter of a wealthy merchant he worked for, by the name of Khadijah, who was at the time about 15 years his senior, making him about 27 and her about 12 years old when they were married. For many years, Muhammad starved himself nearly to death in a cave, waiting for God to reveal the true religion given to Adam that had become lost and polluted throughout the centuries. After many years, according to legend, the angel Gabriel appeared to Muhammad, revealing to him the true word of God, which Muhammad in turn revealed to his scribe to write down because Muhammad couldn't himself read or write, and the rest is in the Quran. Many people may at first think that the worship of this Saturnian deity was restricted to the Mediterranean regions of the Near and Middle East, but that's simply not the case. We can find the same god worshipped by the peoples of ancient Mexico under the name of Huhuteotl, pronounced Huhuteotl, also known as Tata, meaning our Father. This was the ancient fire god of Mexico. He was represented by the color of fire, with a black face, which represents darkness and Saturn, and a headdress of green feathers. I find it most interesting that just as children were passed through fire to Moloch and Baal in the Mediterranean and Middle East as human sacrifice, so too is it said that when a Mexican baby is born, it is passed through a baptism of fire. How oddly familiar. A land on the other side of the globe also has a fire god to whom human sacrifice was made, and a similar connection of children being passed through fire. This cannot be mere coincidence. In ancient Europe, as well as the British Isles, there existed Celtic peoples who worshipped the same deity of evil under the name of Cernunnos, also called the Horned One, to whom they would sacrifice children to once a year during their festival of the Burning Man. Once again, we have a horned deity of fire, linking this deity to the Baphomet or the goat of Saturn, to whom peoples would sacrifice their children. This is the same deity known as Bel, Baal, Nimrod, Moloch, Marduk, Cain, Set, Satan, etc. And they all have the same thing in common: fire, Saturn, and the sacrifice of children. The strangest part about all of this is that the same worship goes on today just as it has for thousands of years to the exact same deity. The symbolism is everywhere, but to the uninformed and the uninitiated, these symbols mean nothing, at least consciously. Take, for example, the back of the American dollar bill, which is flooded with satanic Malachian symbolism. To start, on the front is the American bald eagle, who is himself the shape of a hexagram. Above the eagle's head, we have an emblem containing 13 pentagrams in the shape of a hexagram. In his left talon, he holds 13 arrows. In his right talon, he holds an olive branch, also containing 13 leaves. We have 13 red, white, and blue stripes. We also have the term E pluribus unum, which also contains 13 letters, and when translated to English becomes New World Order or New World of the Ages, which was stolen by a Roman poet named Virgil, and was a term later coined by Adolf Hitler, no doubt meaning one world government ruled by the few. On the back of the bill, in the top right-hand corner, there is a tiny owl peeking out from the background. You also have the eye and the capstone of the pyramid. There are 13 steps in the pyramid up to the eye. And again, we have 13 letters and annuit coeptis, which means he favors our undertaking. This all becomes easy to understand once you realize that America was built from the ashes of many former empires. We must travel back to ancient time, long forgotten and shrouded in mystery. This takes us to the regions of Asia Minor, to an ancient site called Göbekli Tepe. This site dates to around 11,000 BC and is the earliest structure like it ever to be found. These ancient peoples were people who had migrated from northern Europe between 15,000 and 11,000 BC during the last ice age. Then sometime around 4,500 BC, due to global flooding, they were forced to move into the mountains of the Caucasus, where they would stay until their descent into Sumer. I would like to continue with this story on our next episode. This is a Rabbit Hole Matrix. Hit subscribe, hit like. Regardless of what you perceive me as, I'm a highly intellectual person who has spent years, if not nearly my entire lifetime, researching these things so that I can offer the water to other people. I receive no compensation for the things that I do. I do this because the will of God inspires me and compels me to do so. I hope you guys like this video. Hit like, subscribe, and many more will be coming to you shortly.